My name is Rachel Marsh. I'm telling you that up front because I want you to know this isn't a story someone made up. It isn't a creepypasta. It isn't something I heard secondhand from a friend of a friend. It happened to me. In my apartment. In the fall of 2019. And if you're watching this alone right now, and I mean actually alone, in a room by yourself, I want you to do something before I keep going. Go check your front door. I'm not being dramatic, just go check it. Make sure it's locked. Because what I'm about to tell you is the reason I check mine 3 times every night before I go to bed, and I have done that every single night for almost 5 years. It was a Saturday night. I was a sophomore in college, living off campus in a ground-floor apartment I shared with one roommate. She traveled home most weekends, which meant I was alone Friday through Sunday more often than not. That never bothered me. I liked the quiet. I liked having the space. Until the night I found out I wasn't as alone as I thought. Stay with me. Because this story doesn't end where you think it does. The apartment was on the ground floor of a 3-story building near campus. Older building, the kind with thick walls, original windows from the 80s, and a front door that opened directly onto a ground-level walkway. No doorman, no security camera in the lobby, a lock on the main entrance that half the building had a key to. I had lived there for about 2 months by October. My roommate, Jess, was great. We got along well, but she went home to her parents most weekends, which meant from Friday afternoon to Sunday night, that apartment was mine. I'm an introvert. I want to be clear about that. The solitude wasn't something I was managing. It was something I genuinely enjoyed. I liked the quiet. I was the calmest I'd been all week. It was a normal Saturday. I'd done laundry. I'd ordered food. I'd watched something on my laptop in bed. The bedroom door was open. I hadn't thought to close it. Why would I? I was alone. My phone was on the nightstand. It was probably around 11 o'clock. I wasn't even trying to sleep yet. I was just watching something, completely relaxed, completely at ease. And then the front door opened. Not rattled, not knocked. Opened. I heard it clearly. The front door of my apartment, which was maybe 30 feet down the hall from where I was lying in bed, opened. My first thought was Jess. She'd come back early. Plans changed. It happened. I didn't even pause the video. Then I heard footsteps in the hallway. Not rushing, not stumbling. Slow. Measured. Moving away from the front door and toward the back of the apartment, toward the bedrooms. I called out her name. Nothing. The footsteps stopped. I sat up. The apartment was quiet, but it didn't feel empty. This wasn't that silence. This was the other kind. The kind that only happens when someone else is in the room and trying not to make a sound. I grabbed it off the nightstand without turning on the lamp, pulled up Jess's contact, typed 1 sentence. "Hey, are you home?" She replied in under 10 seconds. "No, I'm at my mom's." "What's up?" "Her mom's house is 5 hours away." I stared at those words for what felt like a long time. Someone had walked down the hallway. They stopped when I called out. And now they were somewhere in my apartment, and I hadn't thought to lock my bedroom door. I remember looking at the bedroom door as that last thought arrived. It was open, wide open, and the hallway beyond it was dark. I made a decision not to move, not to close it, not to make any sound that suggested I knew someone was there. I pulled my feet up off the edge of the mattress until I was sitting with my back against the headboard, both feet on the bed, knees to my chest. Phone in both hands, eyes on the door. The apartment stayed quiet. I watched the bottom of the bedroom door for a shadow. That's all I could think to do. If someone was standing in the hallway, I'd see their feet. I'd see the darkness shift. I stared at that thin gap between the door and the floor for what I estimated was about 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I want you to understand what 10 minutes actually feels like in that situation. It doesn't feel like 10 minutes. Each second is its own separate experience. Your hearing becomes something different. You stop filtering. Every sound in the building, every creak, every shift of the pipes, every noise from the street becomes a data point your brain analyzes for threat. I heard nothing. The hallway stayed dark. Nothing moved under the door. And then the front door opened again. The apartment stayed quiet. Then I got up, turned on every light in the apartment, checked every room, every closet, and called 911. The officers arrived quickly. 2 of them. They were professional, thorough. They walked every inch of that apartment with flashlights. They checked under beds, they checked closets, they looked behind shower curtains. Nobody was there. And then one of them said something that I have never stopped thinking about. No sign of forced entry. I told them I was positive I had locked the door. Positive. It was habit, something I did every single time without thinking, same as turning off the kitchen light or plugging in my phone. The officer nodded and said he understood, but there was no forced entry. The lock hadn't been picked, or if it had, it left no evidence. The door frame wasn't damaged. The windows were all latched from the inside. They took a report. They said they'd flag the building. They said to call back if anything else happened. And then they left. I sat in the living room with every light on until the sun came up. The next week I went to the building manager. His name was Dennis. He'd managed the property for 11 years. I told him what happened and watched his expression very carefully. He didn't look surprised. He looked tired. Had this happened before? I asked him directly. He chose his words carefully. He said the building had a master key system, which was standard for apartment complexes. Maintenance, management, and the building owner all had copies. He said there had been, some years back, a situation where a former maintenance employee hadn't returned his key. The locks were changed after that. He said that was handled. I asked him how many people currently had a key to my unit. He said he'd have to look into it. He never got back to me. Here's something most renters don't know, and I didn't know it until after this happened. In the United States, getting a copy of a key made costs about $3 and takes 90 seconds. No identification is required. There is no registry. There is no way to know how many copies of your apartment key exist in the world. Your landlord has one. Maintenance has one. But what about the maintenance worker from 2 years ago who never returned his copy? What about the building manager before that one? What about the previous tenant who had an extra maid and forgot about it? According to the National Crime Prevention Council, apartments are statistically more likely to be burglarized than any other type of housing, 85% more likely, and nearly 2/3 of residential break-ins show no sign of forced entry. No forced entry. The same thing the officer told me. That number stayed with me. I've spent a lot of time thinking about what happened that night. A lot of time. And I've narrowed it down to 3 explanations. First, I forgot to lock the door. The most rational answer, memory is imperfect. Habit can feel like action without the action actually occurring. Maybe I walked past the front door, my hand reached toward the lock, and my brain filed the receipt without my hand actually turning it. It happens. In that scenario, someone tried the door, found it open, walked in, heard me call out a name, panicked, and left. A drunk neighbor. A wrong apartment. Someone who thought the place was empty. Frightening. But human. Explainable. Secondly, someone had a key. This one is darker. The lock showed no damage because there was no damage to be found. The door was opened with a key. Someone who knew the building, knew the unit number, possibly knew when the roommate was typically gone on weekends. That level of familiarity is the part that makes this explanation the most disturbing. It implies watching. It implies knowledge. It implies the kind of deliberate awareness that doesn't just happen by accident. And the final one is something I still can't name. I am not a superstitious person. I grew up in a house where we didn't talk about things like that. I went to college studying accounting, I think in spreadsheets. But I was there. I heard what I heard. I felt what I felt in that silence after the footsteps stopped. And there is a part of me, a part I don't talk about very often, that still isn't fully satisfied with either of the first 2 explanations. I'm not asking you to believe anything. I'm just telling you that the person who was there that night, the person who sat with her back against the headboard for 10 minutes staring at the bottom of a door, doesn't have a clean answer, and has learned to live with that. 2 months after it happened, I moved to a unit on the 2nd floor. New building, better locks. The first thing I did when I got there was change the lock myself, a new deadbolt from a hardware store installed by a locksmith with 2 keys cut and no copies made. I got a simple door alarm, the kind that screams when the door opens, for $12 at a drugstore. I got a second one for the bedroom, and I started locking my bedroom door every night. Not just in that apartment, everywhere. Hotels, friends' houses. Anywhere I sleep, the bedroom door is locked. People notice it sometimes. Friends will mention it. And I always say the same thing. It costs nothing, and it takes 3 seconds. 3 seconds is nothing. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. The feeling of safety is not the same thing as actual safety. Your home feeling safe and your home being safe are two entirely different conditions, and most of the time we have no way of knowing which one we're actually in. The apartment felt safe. The building felt safe. The neighborhood felt safe. None of that was evidence of anything. The only thing standing between me and whoever was in that hallway was the fact that they chose to leave. And I still don't know why. Check your door tonight. Not because I'm trying to scare you, but because you should know, for certain, whether or not it's locked. Not think, not probably, know. If this stayed with you, leave a comment. Tell me whether you would have called the police or stayed quiet or done something completely different. I read every single one. And if you have your own story, something that happened to you in a place you were supposed to feel safe, drop in comment section. The ones that sound the most ordinary are always the ones that stay with me the longest. Subscribe if you're new. Lock your door. I'll see you in the next one.